Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make marshmallow squares, or maybe you know them as pink dreams or dream squares, and this is what they look like. They are a 3-layered bar with a shortbread base, a really nice soft and fluffy marshmallow filling, and then toasted coconut on top. This is my mother's recipe, and it's really one of my favorites. So we're going to start by making the shortbread base. So preheat your oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 165 degrees Celsius. And you will need an 8-inch square baking pan, that's 20 centimeters. And then I like to just lightly butter the bottom and the sides of the pan. You could also just spray it with one of those non-stick vegetable sprays if you like. Okay, and that's it. And then you can make if you have an electric stand mixer like I have, you can make your batter in that. Use the paddle attachment. You could also use a hand mixer, or really, because a shortbread batter is so easy to make, you could just make this by hand. So you will need a half a cup, that's 113 grams of butter, and have that at room temperature. My personal preference is unsalted butter, but you could use salted if that's what you prefer. And then first I'm just going to beat this until the butter's nice and creamy and smooth. Okay, and then I'm going to add just 2 tablespoons, that's about 30 grams of light brown sugar. Because the filling is so sweet, I'm just going to add a little sugar to the shortbread. We don't want it really sweet. And of course, always scrape down the bottom and sides of your bowl as you need to. And then I'm just going to beat this together on medium speed, just until the brown sugar is all incorporated with the butter. Okay. Again, just scrape down. When you make shortbread, you're just mixing the ingredients together. You don't really want to incorporate a lot of air. That's why you could easily just make this in a bowl with a wooden spoon. Okay, so now I'm going to add just a pinch of salt, about 1/8 of a teaspoon, and then 1 cup, which is 130 grams of all-purpose flour. And then I'm just going to beat this on medium speed. Start on slow because you don't want that flour coming up in your face. And I'm going to continue to beat it just until the batter starts to form clumps. I don't want a solid mass, I want it kind of clumps. That'll take like a minute or two. Okay, so that's good. So you just starts to come together. That's all you need. And then let's put this out of the way. Let's put it into your pan. And then you can either use a spoon or an offset spatula, or I typically just use my fingers, just spread it out. Try to get an even layer. Okay, looks good. And then I like to just take the tines of the fork and just prick it a bit so it doesn't puff up on us too much. That's simple enough. So now we're going to bake it in our oven for about 20 minutes, or until it's set and it's lightly browned. Okay, so our shortbread is done. As you can see, it's just starting to turn light brown, especially around the edges. So what we're going to do is just let that cool on a wire rack, and then leave your oven on, because what we're going to do now is take 1 cup, which is 60 grams of dried coconut, and put it on a baking sheet. And you can use either sweetened or unsweetened, shredded or flaked, whatever you want. And I'm going to bake this for between 5 and 8 minutes until it's nice golden brown. Now stir it quite often so that it browns evenly, and watch it carefully, because coconut can burn pretty fast. Okay, so as you can see, our coconut is now nice and golden brown. So what we're going to do, set that aside and let that cool along with our shortbread crust. And we're going to start our marshmallow filling. Now, the first thing we need to do is activate our unflavored gelatin, because this is what is going to thicken and set the marshmallow. So in a medium saucepan, you will need 3/4 of a cup, which is 180 milliliters of cold water. And then I'm going to sprinkle on top a 1/4 ounce package, which is about a scant tablespoon, or by weight that's 7 grams, of unflavored powdered gelatin. As you can see, at least in the States, it comes in these little envelopes, 1/4 ounce envelopes, and they're sold in a box like this, usually 4 envelopes to a box. And you can find it on the baking around with the boxes of Jell-O. And then I'm just going to, this kind of gelatin, just sprinkle it over the top. This kind of gelatin needs to be first, to activate it, you have to put it over cold water. And we're going to leave it for 5 minutes, so set your timer. And at that time, it kind of absorbs the water and becomes really soft and spongy. So 5 minutes. So now, as you can see, our gelatin has become now quite swelled and nice and soft. So now what we have to do is heat it to dissolve it. And I'm going to do that along with 3/4 of a cup, which is 150 grams of granulated white sugar, and just a pinch of salt, like 1/8 of a teaspoon. I'm just going to put that over medium heat and stir it until all the gelatin is dissolved, plus the sugar is dissolved. Okay, that looks good. As you can see, it's still cloudy because of the sugar and everything, but the gelatin is dissolved. And if you touch it, it's quite warm to the touch. So just take it off the heat. Give it a good stir. You don't want this to boil, so be careful about that. And then what I'm going to do is add 3/4 of a cup, which is 85 grams of confectioner sugar. You may also know that as powdered or icing sugar, and sift that because it tends to get lumpy when it's in the bag. And just stir it in. Now you can either use a heat-proof spatula like I have here, or you can just use a wooden spoon as well. And that sugar's just going to dissolve into that hot liquid. And then once that sugar dissolves, then what we're going to do is just let this sit at room temperature until it's kind of cool, until it becomes room temperature, like cool to the touch. Which will take, depending on how hot it is, somewhere around a half hour. So that looks good. So I'm just going to let this sit, and when we come back, we'll finish up our marshmallow filling. Okay, so now our mixture has cooled to room temperature. You can just kind of feel it. It's cool to the touch. So then, if you're using a stand mixer, fit it with the, if you have a whisk attachment, use that. Now, if you don't, you could just use your paddle attachment. That would be fine. You could also use a hand mixer for this as well. So just put it all in there. And then I'm just going to first beat it on medium speed just until it gets nice and foamy. Okay. So this is what you're looking for. You just want some foam. And then what I'm going to do is add 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder. Sprinkle that over the top. And then we want to flavor our marshmallow. I'm going to use 3/4 of a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then you don't have to do this, but my mom always colored the marshmallow pink. So I like to do that. So I'm just using liquid red food coloring, and I find like 2 drops for like a light pink. Of course, you can vary that, or you could use any other color you want. So now what we're going to do is beat this on high speed, probably with a stand mixer 10 minutes. With a hand mixer, I find it takes a little longer. It could take 15 minutes. You want it to be really thick, kind of like whipped cream. So that takes 10 to 15 on high speed. Okay, looks done. Look at that, it's just gorgeous. Nice and soft and fluffy. So this is what you're looking for. So now, just take your cooled, make sure your shortbread base is nice and cool, and then we're just gonna pour this right over the top. Kind of looks like whipped cream. Okay, and you can just use the back of a spoon, or I'm using a spatula here, offset spatula, just to spread it out. Make sure you get in the corners, as always. Okay. Looks good. And then we're going to take our toasted coconut. I like lots. You can use as much or as little. I mean, if you don't like coconut, you can just leave it off. I know some people don't. And so now what we're going to do is let this sit at room temperature for probably at least 6-8 hours, because it takes time for that marshmallow to set up. And then, while you could, after about 8 hours, cut your marshmallow squares and serve it, what I prefer to do is to then cover it, the pan, and let it sit overnight. And I do this for a couple reasons. One, to give that marshmallow extra time to set, and 2, because the shortbread base, if I cut it the first day, it tends to, because it's still quite crisp, it tends to crack. So, and which I don't like. So what I find, if I let it sit overnight, it softens and then it cuts much more easily. So I'm just going to leave that to set for probably 6-8 hours. So we're now ready to cut our marshmallow squares. So just take a sharp knife and cut along the inside edge to loosen both the shortbread and the marshmallow filling from the sides. And then, as always, you can cut these as large or as small as you want. Make sure you cut down right to the bottom of the pan, right through that shortbread. And then And if you're like me, the first one is always a little difficult to get out. So I just call that my treat. So you can use a knife, or I've got an little small offset spatula to do this, and we'll see if we can get it out here. Oh, not too bad. So there we have it. And you can see that if you cut these squares the first day, the reason I stored them overnight is so that when I cut through that shortbread, it comes in a solid layer. If you try to cut it the first day, what I find is the shortbread is still quite crisp and you get a lot of cracking. Not that that's a problem, but if you want it to look really nice, then let them sit overnight. So what we have is a nice shortbread base with, I mean, doesn't that marshmallow filling look wonderful? And then the toasted coconut on top. So I'm just going to cut myself just a small piece because we have to try it. Good as always. Got that buttery shortbread and the fluffiness and the sweetness from the marshmallow, and then the little crunch from the toasted coconut. This is a really nice square. So you can cover and store these probably 5 days at room temperature, or you could store them in the fridge if you prefer, or they can even be frozen. So until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.